Okay, what spiritual doctrine did they adhere to?
Were they mystics or were they just soldiers? Or did they have a spiritual doctrine? Or discipline, should I say?
Some of the original Shriners belonged to what they referred to as the Khalwati order of the Mutasawwaf, or Sufis. And they were from the Masjid al-Ali, which in English becomes the Temple of Ali. And that was in Sharq al-Awsat, or Saudi Arabia. Years ago, the family of the Prophet Muhammad called Ahl al-Bayt. So they had a mystical order of Sufis. Now, when you go back to the Torah or the Old Testament, you find out that these men are referred to as the Essenes. When you go back to Persia, amongst the Farsiya, or they become known as the Magus or the Magi. So they always did have a secret doctrine. And their secret doctrine you find in the books of Job. You'll find in the books of Job 9, especially because they're talking about the constellations of the stars. And they use 4 major stars there. They use the Orion star constellation called Kisil. They use Arcturus, Pleiades, and then they use Mezarus. And the word Mezarus translates as the 12 signs of the zodiac. You follow? So the original travelers across the desert would use the stars as our guide to lead us from oasis to oasis, to town, to village to village. And so they did have a doctrine. That doctrine has been borrowed by the Greeks and Latin and watered down, became known as astrology and zodiac today. But they did have a doctrine, the Magus. In fact, Jesus' son, Simeon Bar Jesus, as meant found in Acts, he was also a part of the order. And they called him a Magus if you read the books of Acts, right? Because he belonged to the brotherhood. When Miriam, or Mary, was about to deliver, she had 3 men. Each of those men were leading a company of 15 men when you do research into Egypt. You get the story from the Coptic church, because the brother of Jesus, called James, his real name was Yaanuwn, took the real teachings of Jesus into Egypt and back to the village where Mary was when he was a child, amongst the Hendendawa, or the Biga people. When you go back and study that, you'll find things that they didn't record, or that the Nicaeans, or those councilmen of Nicene, took out of the Bible, took out certain books. And that's why if you look at the Catholic Bible and then look at the King James Version of the Bible, you'll find the King James Version only has 66 books and the Catholic Bible has 72 books. And this is it today, because the Catholic Bible was the original Bible, because the Roman Catholics, because Constantine was the first Roman to convert to Christianity. And the Bibles that people are holding today, like we use, the King James Version was taken from the Tinsdale version, which was taken from the Wycliffe version, which was done in German before it was even brought to English. And then books were stolen and moved around, and translations confused, and words moved. And for instance, the very word God in Genesis was altered from a pluralization to an infinite. That's why they say in the beginning God. It leaves it where that could be gods 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 when you look at the word God. So there was a mystical doctrine. There were secrets that were kept and protected. Certain things that the brotherhood protected, right? About the family of Jesus, about the crucifixion of Jesus, about the life and whereabouts of Mary after Jesus. Jesus had what we refer to as sacred disciples, like Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, and these individuals belonged to a sacred brotherhood, of which Lazarus was initiated in. Okay, just to jump around a little. So we do have the wise men who were from Persian chapter that came over to see the child that was born, actually to protect him. If you really read the Bible close, had not the wise men got there and told Joseph and Mary what to do, then Jesus might have died before he got baptized and received the power of God. Because the reality is that if Jesus had to leave Jerusalem and go to Egypt because Herod wanted to kill him, then the reality is he could die then. So he had to wait till he got to the point where he received the power of God, which was done by St. John the Baptist, who baptized him at age 29, where he received his godship, where he was invincible before, of course, the cross incident, as they put it, which, of course, part of the ritual is who was really on the cross. Did they really die on the cross? Did Jesus really marry? Was the wedding a canon? Whose wedding was that? All these things were held as secrets, but they recorded in Arabic. It wasn't put in other languages, and that's because Arabic preceded Hebrew, contrary to what most people believe. If you anybody has a Bible and they open the books of Genesis to the 10th chapter, where they start giving you the genealogy coming down from Noah and them, you'll find that a person called Ashur was before a person called Aram. As you look in the Hebrew text, wherever they have, Syriac, you'll see they have Aram. They switched it around. But the word Ashur became known as Syriac, and that's Syria, and the language then in that area became known as Arabic. Let me make it clear. There's no such language, Arabic. Became known as Arabic because the word Arabic in Arabic, Arabiya, merely means to ara, to roam from place to place. And when Ibrahim, or in Hebrew Abraham, right, left Ur of Chaldea to cross the Tigris Euphrates to go over to the Phoenicians, where they called him Ivri, or Hebrew, right? He was speaking Syriac. And they'll tell you Lebanon was Assyrian, and that was Abraham's Nahar, Abraham's father's brother, Tyrannim, was in Syria. Chaldea was considered Syrians. I don't want to lose you now. But that language, Arabic, existed first. This is why you have two different names in the Bible for God. One name being Yahweh or Jehovah, and the other name being Elohim. You follow? The word Yahweh or Jehovah is equivalent to when you say in Aramic, bar for son, as opposed to what you would say in Syriac, ben for son. So that's why you have two sons, Bar Jesus, and then Ben this, because two languages are running through the Bible. One of them is Syriac, or from Ashur, the oldest son, and the other is Aramic, which became known as Hebrew. Yahweh or Jehovah is a Hebrew name, but the word Elohim is the plural for Elo or Ilah or Allah, which is ancient Ashuric or an Arabic name. You follow that? Jesus spoke Arabic, and that's why Jesus in the New Testament didn't call on Yahweh. He said Eli. He used the word Ilah. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have thou forsaken me? Because Jesus was a Nazarite, and he lived in Galilee. And the Galileans spoke Arabic, which you read in Acts when they start talking about the speaking in tongues. When you do a research, you find out that most of those tongues or languages they were speaking was different variations of Arabic. Syria, Egypt, and such. So Jesus himself spoke a form of Arabic, as well as he did understand the Nazarite dialect and Aramic, but his key language was Arabic. That's why he used the word Eli and not Jehovah when he was on the cross. And throughout the Bible, you find men that have Eli in their name or El in their name, dealing with the Ashuric side of the family, which came down to Abraham, to